Good evening, I'm Michael and you're watching Kini News, the show that brings you today's biggest stories. It appears Anwar Ibrahim's dreams of becoming Prime Minister has been slashed once again, with Zahid Hamidi deciding the party will be backing PN in the name of national interest. Meanwhile, if you're hoping to see fireworks at UMNO's next AGM, you'll have to wait until next year because it has been postponed to the middle of 2021.
Zahid Hamidi's move to reaffirm support for Perikatan Nasional a week after UMNO threatened to pull its support for PN amid tensions with Bersatu is not a U-turn, according to UMNO Supreme Council member Annuar Musa. Yesterday, Zahid announced that his party would strengthen its cooperation with all PN members in a bid to put national interests above politics. This also comes a week after speculation that Umno MPs were backing PKR President Anwar Ibrahim's bid to form a new government. Yesterday, a Malaysia Now article which cited sources had claimed that Zahid's statement backing PN came after a heated 4-hour meeting in which state UMNO leaders rebuked the party president for backing Anwar. However, according to Annuar Musa, Zahid had made his own decision. Anwar Musa added that the report was clearly not true and that a meeting of the length did not exist. Besides reaffirming support for PN, Zahid also called for a political ceasefire so that tackling the COVID-19 pandemic and its economic impact on the people can be prioritized. Meanwhile, UMNO Youth met online last night and adopted resolutions formalizing its support for the political ceasefire announced by Zahid. They also rejected any cooperation with Anwar and Pakatan Harapan, singling out DAP in particular.
Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin will be chairing a special cabinet meeting in Putrajaya tomorrow to discuss the country's COVID-19 response, just as active cases in the country have exceeded 8,000. Here's the country's latest COVID-19 situation.
Malaysia reported 847 new COVID-19 cases today, with a spike in Negeri Sembilan and Labuan. Both reported single-digit new cases yesterday. However, today, Negeri Sembilan saw 38 new cases and Labuan recorded 29 new cases. However, Sabah still leads with 578 new cases, followed by Selangor with 132 new cases. Malaysia's COVID-19 death toll has reached 204, with 5 more deaths reported and active cases breaching the 8,000 mark for the first time. Meanwhile, there were 486 recoveries reported today. Health Ministry Director General Dr. Norhesham Abdullah today urged Malaysians to stay at home as much as possible, as it will only take 2 weeks for the COVID-19 infection chain to be broken.
Sekali lagi saya ingin memperingatkan diri saya dan Kementerian Kesihatan untuk patuh kepada SOP. Setiap daripada kita ada SOP masing-masing dalam kita melaksanakan tugas kita. Kalau kita tak patuh kepada SOP, apa akan berlaku? Kita mungkin dijangkiti COVID-19. Ataupun kita ada masalah-masalah dan kekangan dalam kita menjalankan tugas. Dan yang kita juga menasihati rakyat Malaysia untuk patuh kepada SOP. Kalau boleh duduk di rumah untuk tempoh 2 minggu. 2 minggu cukup untuk kita memutuskan rantaian jangkitan COVID-19. Kalau terpaksa keluar, jadi pastikan kita pakai penutup muka, amalkan penjarakan sekurang-kurang 1 meter, jangan bagi peluang virus tersebut untuk menjangkiti. Kalau ke tempat yang sesak ataupun tempat yang sempit, inilah satu keadaan yang mana virus tu mudah menjangkiti. Jadi kita jaga keluarga kita jaga masyarakat dan juga negara kita.
The press conference by Ismail Sabri Yaakob today touched on everything from the need to unite to fight COVID-19 to the contents of his cabinet. Ismail also downplayed criticism of his daily press conference, insisting it was needed.
Senior Minister Ismail Sabri Yaakob took time to explain the logic behind the government's latest work-from-home order for areas under the Conditional Movement Control Order. This comes after the order caused much confusion among the people since it was announced on October 20th.
Our idea, tujuan kita adalah mengurangkan pergerakan. Bayangkan, 1 juta yang kita boleh work from home tadi tidak ke pejabat. Jadi 1 juta pergerakan dan juga 1 juta mereka itu akan berinteraksi antara sama lain juga. Jadi bila kita kurangkan pergerakan, mungkin lebih berjaya dari segi kita untuk memutuskan rantaian COVID-19 ini, sebab semakin kurang orang boleh berinteraksi antara satu sama lain.
When quizzed on why the order affects only industries under the purview of the Ministry of International Trade and Industry and civil servants under the Public Service Director General, Ismail had this to say.
Sebagai contoh, saya di Kementerian Pertahanan ini, Legal Department menyediakan perjanjian. Sebagai contoh, mereka boleh menyediakan perjanjian di rumah pun. Tidak perlu pun berada di pejabat. Tapi bahagian perakaunan, bahagian akaun, hujung bulan mereka perlu menyediakan gaji untuk dibayar kepada pekerja. Dan mereka juga perlu ada waktu itu, kalau tidak sebulan pun, sekurang-kurangnya seminggu sebelum bayar gaji, mereka perlu menyediakan gaji dan sebagainya, perlu ada di pejabat. Jadi sebahagiannya, kalau tidak ada di pejabat, kerja boleh diteruskan. Jadi sebab itulah kita benarkan sebahagian, bukan semua pun, sebahagian untuk bekerja di rumah, tetapi sebahagian masih diperlukan bekerja di pejabat.
Ismail also cited his receptionists as an example, saying they wouldn't be able to do their jobs from home. He also said the same applies for waiters and retail staff who would need to be present at their workplace due to the nature of their jobs.
Jadi sebab itulah sebahagiannya kita tak boleh nak paksa semua bekerja daripada rumah. Walaupun tujuan kita adalah untuk mengurangkan pergerakan. Kurangkan pergerakan yang seboleh-bolehnya.
Ismail also called on Malaysians to unite and put aside politics to combat COVID-19. This comes after DAP Segambut MP Hannah Yeo slammed Putrajaya for issuing a half-baked work-from-home directive. In a statement today, she attributed the confusing SOPs on the work-from-home directive to the lack of coordination among the federal ministers.
Khairuddin Aman Razali's case has been marked as NFA and past leaders are rejoicing. But it now leaves us with one big question. Why was he fined 1,000 if he did nothing wrong?
Past Central Committee member Nik Abdul Aziz has praised God after the authorities dropped a probe on fellow past leader Khairuddin Aman Razali. Nik Abdul said now that the long-awaited truth has been revealed by the authorities, Pakatan Harapan can move to other issues to garner support. The past leader also sarcastically thanked Harapan figures for repeatedly complaining about Khairuddin to the police, which he said the latter performed investigations with integrity and transparency. Nik Abdul added that Khairuddin had apologized openly, paid the 1,000 ringgit fine and surrendered 4 months of his ministerial salary to the federal government's COVID-19 relief fund. This comes after Bukit Aman Federal Criminal Investigation Department Director Huzaim Mohammed revealed yesterday that the Attorney General's chambers decided not to take action against Khairuddin. The instructions from the AGC was NFA, or no further action, because the minister was not provided with the 14B form to undergo quarantine. Khairuddin was probed for violating the quarantine order after returning from a semi-official work trip to Turkey in July. In August, the Health Ministry slapped a 1,000 ringgit fine on the Kuala Nerus MP following public outrage. However, the AGC did not explain why the Kuala Nerus MP was handed a backdated 1,000 ringgit fine.
Stay with us and we'll let you know what Thai protesters are demanding from their Prime Minister. Thailand's Prime Minister says he's going to lift the state of emergency imposed last week to stop mass protests in Bangkok. But as he spoke, protesters marched to the government house seeking his resignation.
Thai protesters on Wednesday gave Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha a 3-day deadline to step down or face more demonstrations. But the leader who made the announcement was arrested within 2 hours. Prayut had earlier said he was ready to lift emergency measures he imposed last week to stop the protests as a move to de-escalate the situation. Tens of thousands of people marched to his offices at the government house. The protesters have been demonstrating for months against Prayut and to demand curbs to King Maha Vajiralongkorn's powers. They claim success after handing a mock registration letter for Prayut to an official outside. In a televised address, Prayut had said he was ready to lift measures banning political gatherings for 5 or more people and publication of information deemed to threaten security. The protests have become the biggest challenge to Thailand's establishment in years and have drawn the most open opposition to the monarchy in decades, despite laws setting jail terms of up to 15 years for insulting royalty. Most demonstrations have been peaceful so far, but police used water cannons against protesters last Friday, further fueling the anger of government critics. Riot police briefly held up Wednesday's march at one point before letting the crowds through. Protesters say Pride rigged an election last year to keep hold to power he seized in a 2014 coup. However, he says the election was fair. Protesters accuse the monarchy of enabling years of military domination. The palace has a policy of making no comment to the media. Prayut said protesters should wait for next week's emergency session of parliament, whose entire upper house was appointed by his former junta.
At least 15 people were killed in a stampede among thousands of Afghans gathered near Pakistan's consulate on Wednesday.
At least 15 people have been killed in a human stampede in the Afghan city of Jalalabad. Thousands gathered near Pakistan's consulate there, and officials say jostling broke out between people applying for visas. An estimated 3,000 Afghans had congregated on the open ground, which is usually used for sports and public gatherings. Officials told Reuters that they were waiting to collect tokens needed to apply for a visa. 11 of the 15 victims were women, and several senior citizens were among more than a dozen injured, including Aladdin Khan.
When the jostling broke out, weaker people fell to the ground and stronger people dragged themselves out of the crowd. The women were also there and were being stamped during the crowd. Some people criticize us for getting the visa, but I want to go to Pakistan because of my illness.
Tens of thousands of Afghans travel every year to neighbouring Pakistan to secure medical treatment, education and jobs. Pakistan also hosts about 3 million Afghan refugees and economic migrants. The Pakistan embassy in Kabul issued a statement expressing deep grief and sadness.
Several people have died after getting flu shots in South Korea in the past week, authorities said, raising concerns over the vaccine's safety.
Several people have died after getting the flu vaccine in South Korea over the past week, sparking fears over the vaccine's safety, and coming at a critical time. The government's seasonal inoculation program is currently being expanded to head off potential complications from the coronavirus pandemic. Authorities are saying there's no reason to believe that deaths are linked to the vaccine program and plan to continue it, but an investigation is underway. The news has dominated headlines in South Korea. Among those killed is a 17-year-old boy who died 2 days after he was vaccinated. A man in his 70s was the most recent case as of Wednesday evening. It also comes just weeks after the rollout of the national vaccine program was suspended over safety concerns. It was discovered at the time some 5 million doses had been exposed to room temperature, although they need refrigeration.
That is all from me today. For more stories, you can go to KiniTV.com. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube and Facebook for the latest news updates. I'll be back with more tomorrow, same time, same place. I'm Michael. Thank you for watching.